Hello. So I just thought I'd make a little video, and I think it's going to rain. Whatever, it's the time of year. So I was thinking about time, really, how fast time goes, particularly as we get older. But there are moments when time goes slow as well. You know, you can't wait for something and it seems to take forever more. And that doesn't really leave us, you know. It's like year to year when you're little, 9 to 10. That 1 year can take like 5 years, you know. Or the 3 weeks run up to Christmas. Seems like 6 months, you know. So time is all over the place, really. The reason why I'm thinking about time is, as I'm making this, yesterday would have been my mum's birthday. So that's the 25th of Jan. I know you won't see this now, probably till February. But so yeah, yesterday would have been my mum's birthday. My mum passed away in 2015. She was 81. So that means she'd be 89 this year, if I got that right. So 90 next year, you know. I'm amazed that 8 years has gone by. Absolutely amazed. It doesn't feel like that. And obviously all the rest, when we miss somebody, you know, when we've lost somebody, we get all those familiar feelings of loss, of I would say, of functioning on this planet without that loved one there to perhaps guide you. I wrote a poem that I managed to read, and God knows how I managed to read it, at my mum's funeral. So I stood up and on the microphone I read the poem, and part of the poem said, "You're my guardian angel now, Mum, sitting on my shoulder to whisper words of wisdom as I get older." And I actually believe that. I really do. I don't ever believe that somebody is completely gone from this planet. Don't believe that at all. And that could be airy-fairy bullshit and what have you, but I've always said in these videos, and I've always said it in my life really, the two things that you cannot take away from this planet when somebody dies, two things, and that is the love they shared. Right, that's number one. You cannot take that away. If that person loved you, because they're now no longer visible to us on this planet, doesn't mean they took their love with them. It doesn't mean you've lost that love. It doesn't mean that love wasn't important or didn't exist or doesn't exist. You still love that person. Of course you do. You still know that that person loved you. So the two things I believe are love and energy. Energy is a funny thing, really, but I believe we've all got an energy, and you know, you can weigh up a person yourself. You can look at me and you can think, oh, Bry's energy is this or that or whatever, or I get this particular feeling when I hear him talk. That's kind of my energy coming across to you, hopefully. Well, once that's put up into the ether, once that's spread around the globe, that doesn't leave. It really doesn't leave, you know. And the energy can be so many different ways. It can be thoughts and feelings and little things that, in my case, that my mum did or said. You know, I was thinking yesterday, this is the wrong thing to think. The wrong thing to think. Yeah, that'll do. The wrong thing to think, particularly on my mum's birthday, but whatever. Your brain does what it wants to do. My mum left home, left us kids, to get a divorce. That's the way it was done many, many years ago. I was 12. So that would have been 73, 74, it would have been. And she was gone for about a year, which was awful. And that left us with my so-called father, who I hated. I hated him since I realised he was my father. I was a tot, but just hated him from the second I could, really, and rightly so. But whatever, that's how the situation was. And as a little boy, I blamed my mum in my head. I blamed my mum for leaving. I thought, why would she leave us? I mean, she doesn't love us if she's left us. Well, actually, it's the opposite, but, that's what I thought. She can't love us, not really, if she's prepared just to leave us. But my thoughts and feelings and everything else with my small mind at 12 was all over the place. I missed her and I wanted her back, and why don't she just come back, and just carry on as normal? Why should she? Why should she carry on that loveless, violent marriage? At 12, I didn't realise it was a loveless, violent marriage, but that's the way that I, as a little boy, was thinking, So I blamed my mum in lots of ways, only in my own head. And I missed her and I wanted her back. And I believe I went through grief for the first ever time, because grief isn't always to do with death. You can actually grieve. If you're in a hurricane and your house blows down, you can grieve all your belongings and your house and all the memories that contained, and that neighbourhood and those friends and all those whatever Christmas parties or whatever you celebrated there, all the photographs and the trinkets that you've collated over the years. You're grieving for that. You can grieve at the loss of a job. You can grieve in lots of ways, and even though I was quite sure that my mum wasn't dead, I was still grieving because I was missing her, and I was missing her as somebody who passed on, somebody who wasn't here, wasn't visible to my eyes. Anyway, cheers. But that's all as a little boy. Now I've got a little bit of a brain now. And I was just thinking yesterday, my poor mum, how must she have felt on that first night away from her kids? How must she have felt? What must she have went through? Her thoughts, her feelings, her tears. I bet she didn't eat. I bet she couldn't sleep. I bet she was full of worry. I bet she was questioning, have I done the right thing, the wrong thing? Shall I go back? Can I go back? Should I go back? That poor woman, it must have been awful really, because there was 5 of us, and at the time that my mum went, my eldest brother had left home, and my sister, who's a few years older than me, she sort of become our kind of pseudo-mum, I suppose, in a way, we just dragged ourselves up for a while, But yeah, that's what I'm thinking of, really, is that she had 20 odd years of being a mum, and suddenly this one night, not one night, it was lots of nights, but this first night alone. And she went to a place that she didn't know very well. Eventually we found out, she went to my auntie's in Windsor, and we was in a little village in Oxfordshire. So quite a long way away. We didn't know that she was there for the year, really. Or it might have been 18 months, actually, that she was away. I don't know. But yeah, she wouldn't have slept well, would she? Strange bed, strange this, strange that. And you know what it's like when you're in somebody else's house, even though that's her sister. She couldn't have really been in herself, she wasn't in her own home, she wasn't around her familiar things, she wasn't around her children, she didn't have all those things in life that make us who we are. We are made up of lots of different things, but by having familiar things, even familiar neighbourhood or whatever, and all our trinkets and spangly, sparkly things that we've gathered and what have you, they mean something, they mean something that makes us who we are to a degree, and to be away from all of that, to have nothing of the familiar and no contact. We didn't have a house phone. Obviously there was no mobile phones, no internet. There was no way of connecting, communicating with us at all. I got a hair on my nose. I just brushed my dog and I got hair. I can feel it. You wanted to know that, didn't you? Anyway, yeah, so it was a strange thought really yesterday, but I feel so sorry for her. I always wish that I could speak to my mum anyway. One last conversation, that's what I call it, but it would be a million one last conversations. I would like my mum to be here now, and I'd like to say to her, you know, I realise what you went through, particularly on that first night. You know, I mean, how would you feel? How would I feel? How would anybody feel? You know? So, yeah, I really feel for her, and I'd like her to know that obviously I forgive her, everybody forgives her, and I hope that she knew that, and I hope that she knew that nobody blamed her, but we never said these things to her, ever, none of us. Anyway, if she was here, that's what I would tell her, you know. But yeah, so time is a funny thing, really. I mean, 8 years has gone by. It's and it seems to have gone in a bit of a blip, because time does move on as you get older. The years are only about 8 months long. Yeah. So, I'll turn this off and then turn it back on. Yeah, I like to turn the camera off and turn it back on, because sometimes it just says, now that's enough. You know, it just won't allow me to do the talking, I tells you. So, anyway. So yeah, I was just talking about my mum there. 8 years have gone by. She died on... it doesn't matter when she died, actually. This is the other thing I was going to talk about. We talk about time, and time includes dates and things like that. So my mum's date of birth is 25th of January 1934. Bless her, what a life, 34. So when she was 9 or 10, she was going through the war. Can you believe it? And then when she was 16, just when she started to get interested in boys, I presume, she had a gum disease called pyorrhea, and she lost all of her teeth. So she went for a couple of years while her gums were hardening up, looking like some gummy old witch. Could you believe that at 16? You know, bless her. And then eventually, she had a terrible life with her mother. Her mother was a very, very violent psychopath of a woman, and I know that now. Awful, evil woman. And my mum just wanted out, and she met this bloke, and she quickly sort of married him, if we're honest. You know, she quickly just disappeared. And that's my father, or was my father, so-called father. But, you know, she jumped into that relationship because what an awful life. I mean, you know, violent, terrible life that she lived. And this woman's husband, which would be my granddad, lived an awful life with this woman. Was a great, big, strong, fat woman. And apparently my granddad was a tiny, tiny little slender man. And he saved up his money. He used to go to work and come back and give her all the money. And she used to give him enough to buy a little bit of tobacco. Anyway, what he did, he saved up a couple of pennies out of the tobacco. He would go without tobacco for a few days so he could save a couple of pennies. And after a couple of years, he saved up enough to buy a fishing rod. And he said to her, you know, I've managed to save some money and I bought this fishing rod and I want to go fishing. And anyway, he went to work the following day, came home. My mum walked in and he was sobbing on his bed, crying his eyes out. And she went up and said, what's wrong? And he said, look out the window. Anyway, she'd got his fishing rod, this woman, his wife, got his fishing rod and snapped it over her knee and burnt it in the garden. Just an evil, pure evil woman. She was very violent to him, very violent to the children, which include my mum. Sadly, my granddad, because he was very slightly built, he had a little moped that he used to go to work on. And if he was late, he would go along the towpath, along the canal and up over the bridge and then into work that way. Or if he had a bit of time, he'd just go the roadway, which took sort of double the amount of time. It was only about 10 minutes or 20 minutes. And there'd been a load of rain the previous night, and he woke up and he was slightly late, so he decided to go the towpath way. And what happened was a root of a tree had been exposed because of all the rain, had washed some of the path away, and he hit that. Unfortunately, he went over into the canal and the bike landed on top of him, and he was such a slight man he couldn't get the bike off and he drowned. Anyway, so he had an awful life, bless him, but perhaps that was some merciful release, or I don't know what it was for him. Anyway, yeah, so I'm just thinking about time and stuff like that, really. And they say, don't they, live your life like it's your last day on this earth. Well, no, thank you. Not for me. You can do what you like. If it was my last day on earth today, I'd be flying around saying goodbye to people, meeting people, giving people hugs or gifts or money or whatever I've got. Listen to him. I brushed him and I've sprayed him with, I spray him with, it's like Johnson's baby powder. It's a smell, that's all it is. It's not the powder. I wouldn't use that, obviously. Yeah, so live your life like every day is your last day. No, that's absolutely ridiculous. You need to savour life sometimes. You need to read, you need to meditate, you need to listen to music, you need to spend time with your loved ones. If today was your last day, you wouldn't be spending it with your wife, your husband, your boyfriend, whoever's close to you. You'd be flitting around all over the bloody place, I tells you. So sod that. I like a nice, gentle, peaceful life, and if I pop off tomorrow, well, so be it. That'll do me. But yeah, I can't live my life. I couldn't live my life rushing around like that, and that's just ridiculous. But perhaps perhaps I'm taking that out of context. Live your life like every day is your last day. Yeah, okay. I mean, do what pleases you. Well, I do. I follow my bliss. I retired. Luckily, I retired when I was 48 years of age, so that was fantastic. So I've had a number of years where I've managed to just enjoy my life, which is great. But yeah, I've got 3 text messages all in one there. Wow. That'll beep again in a minute because that's what it does. It's just a reminder beep on there. Well, it's not even a beep, it goes like that. Yeah, so time is a funny thing, really. I remember the raw days. I've lost more than just my mum in my life, obviously. Well, I say obviously. I think everybody at my age and older, we've lost our parents, haven't we? Most people. If you haven't, then you're very, very lucky. And my advice to you is to make the most of them. If you've still got your parents in your life, see them often. And I mean more than once or twice or 3 times a week. See them a lot. Talk to them a lot. Give them a hug. Tell them how proud you are, how pleased you are. I mean, it sounds ridiculous. Pleased you are that they were or are your parents. Make sure they know they're loved, they're cherished, they're cared for. Buy them a little gift. There will come a time when you can't buy that gift, when you can't spend that 5 minutes with them. There will come a time. Make the most of them now, today. Assuming that you get on with them, because not everybody does, and that's fine. What else was I saying? Don't know, really. I wasn't listening. Yeah, it's just a funny old thing, isn't it, time? Talking about grief, there is no getting over grief. I'm really, this if you have watched my videos over the years. There isn't a 12-step thing. There isn't anger follows, disbelief. Disbelief follows, whatever. There isn't that. Everybody's different. Everybody's different. And that's the other. You got to do whatever is right for you. And there is nothing to get over. When you've lost somebody, you don't get over it. That's an awful phrase. How can you get over? You're getting over somebody's life, right? You're forgetting their life. You're moving on. You are moving on. But, you're moving on past their life and whatever. Grief lives within you. That's where it lives, and whoever you've lost in your life, that grief sometimes lies dormant, and that's lovely, but it's there, and it's there. You can just about feel it. And sometimes, and often for no rhyme or reason, it goes whew, and it literally explodes. And it can be on an anniversary, a person's birthday perhaps, or a Christmas day, or whatever you felt was important with that loved one. And as I say, it can be for no rhyme or reason. Now, what I was talking about earlier was time includes dates. So my mum's date was the 25th of January 1934, and then I went off on a tangent, didn't I, talking about pioneer and the war and ration books probably. What I don't hold on to, I know the date, it's the 4th of Feb 2015. That is the day that my mum died. Now, I don't hold on to that at all. There's nothing to celebrate there, is there? There's nothing even to mark, as far as I'm concerned. When a person dies, it's a day not of their choosing. It is, unless it's suicide or whatever, but it's, really, it's not a day to remember. It's not a day of their choosing. It's not a day that's important in any way, shape or form. For me, you may feel different, and that's fine. We do whatever we do. But somebody's birthday, the day my mum landed on this planet, that's an important day, and all those birthdays all through the years, 81 of those birthdays. It's quite a number, really. So yeah, that day is important. Christmas Day is important. It's not important for me because I don't celebrate Christmas, but I celebrate Bodhi's birthday, which is on the 25th of December. And I always get a couple of cards out that my mum sent me, and I always wish her a happy Christmas. She's the only one on this planet. Is she on this planet? She's the only one in my head that I say, verbalise, Merry Christmas, Mum, And I always say, thank you so much for all you did over those Christmases and blah, blah, blah. And I have a little chat with my mum every 25th of December. As I say, it's not Christmas Day to me, but my mum loved it. Absolutely loved Christmas. Even as an old lady, she was so excited, She'd rub her hands together and she'd be smiling. She'd be looking at people. She'd get as much enjoyment out of watching somebody open something than she would herself opening something. And especially kids, if little kids were all excited and they believed in Santa still, and they were amazed with the tree sparkling or whatever, excuse me, she loved that, absolutely loved it. So Christmas Day, or as I call it, 25th of December, is a day that I think about my mum, and I'm sure everybody else does in the family. And of course my mum's birthday. But the day of my mum's death isn't important. It doesn't matter. I don't think about it. And normally the day goes by and I haven't even thought about it. And a few days later, I might get to the 10th or 20th or whatever of February and think, oh, we're here already. That's way past, because it's not an important date. It's not a date that I need in my head, really. Anyway, so yeah, just a Slurpee and a talk about time, really. So we were going down the woods. Then it rained, and I thought, sod it. I've got wet far too often just lately. I don't get wet, don't get cold. Now I'm in bricks, I'm lovely and warm. You know, I was telling a friend the other day that I got cold on the road. I got cold travelling, very, very cold every winter. And I refuse, even though things, yeah, they are expensive now. You know, of course, your fuel bills are expensive. I won't go cold. I won't go cold now, you know. And that's the end of it. Talking about time, just moving back in my mind, thinking about cold. We were so cold as little kids. We did survive, obviously, so that's fine. But we had lino on the floor instead of a carpet because we couldn't afford a carpet. The only form of heat was a coal fire, but that was downstairs in the lounge, living room, whatever you want to call it, back room. I think 90% of the heat went up the chimney, so it didn't warm the house at all. The house was absolutely bitter. We used to have ice on the inside of the windows, the single paned windows. You know, no central heating, no double glazing, no duvets. We had a pile of blankets and coats and stuff like that. Yeah, it was cold, very cold. One thing my mum did do is always make sure that we had a hot meal. Always. Every day, you know, regardless, we always had a hot meal. And I know that wasn't the case for many people. You know, I had a friend who lived across the road, and I know that he had soup and bread. That's what he had. That was his meal. But yeah, so thank you, Mum, for making me so fat. Anyway, just talking about time. But we do miss our loved ones, of course we do, you know. If you miss them, and you miss them a lot sometimes, you know, it's just a mark of how much you loved that person. So actually missing them a lot is a lovely thing when you think about it, you know. And I believe they never really leave this planet, not really. That's what I believe. And, Bode, can you go and lay down, please? He does this. He really annoys me sometimes. He's been stamping his feet. I don't know what you can hear, but it just gets on my tits. It means I want to go out. Well, it's not raining, so I will take him out, but I want 5 minutes on here. Yeah, so what was I talking about? Can't remember. Talking about a meal. We always had a hot meal, so that was nice. Oh yeah, how much you love a person. It just goes to show how much you love that person. And I believe that people don't leave this planet. You know, your love, your energy, as I mentioned earlier, that is still here. And there's a great song by a band called Train, Train, Train. I think it's called Drops of Jupiter, and it's about the lead singer's mum. She died as they were writing the album, and he doesn't believe that anybody that you really love, he doesn't believe that they just fade away instantly and that's it, they've gone. And he believes that his mum is in the wind, his mum is in the rain, and whatever lands on this planet has probably touched other planets. So Drops of Jupiter, you know, it's a great song. Listen to that. Train, I believe it's called Drops of Jupiter. Anyway, thank you for listening. I'm just emptying my head, really. But happy birthday yesterday to my old mum. So she's going to be 90 next year. Well, she's not going to be. She would have been 90 next year. But they have celestial birthdays, don't they? They have, you know, my mum still has heavenly birthdays, you can call it. You can call it whatever you like, really. Anyway, that's it. I'm just rambling on now. Take care and be well. Ta-da.